Julia Van Haaften is a writer based in New York. She was the founding curator of photography at the New York Public Library, where in 1989 she organized the first retrospective exhibition of American photographer Berenice Abbott. She is the author most recently of Berenice Abbott, A Life in Photography. Your name, Van Haaften, seems to me like a really old, Dutch New York name.
It is a Dutch
your
name.
Family story?
It is not an old New York name. We are the Michigan Dutch that came in the middle of the 19th century, and a lot of them went out to California. They just did it because they could get work. Our contemporary world understands that in other cultures, but doesn't really know that it happened in America.
You started working at the New York Public Library at some point, but did you know Berenice Abbott before that already?
I did not. And that was really the entree to her. I admired her from teenage because of the PSSC physics book. And I got to know Berenice because I was organizing a retrospective exhibition.
Right.
So that was sort of the rationale for bothering her, being engaged, asking her questions. And then this idea that she kept telling me interesting details at personal things.
A lot of people now want to make her into a kind of feminist lesbian icon or something like that, and she was so resistant to that in her own way.
She was totally resistant to being labeled.
Recognition of a sort, but it sort of doesn't combat the problem in the right way.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And I don't mean that to sound, retrograde. I think it really still is sort of a backhand way of granting acknowledgement.
It also wasn't so much of an identity back then either. I mean, I think people were more pansexual between the wars. They were very experimental
and fluid and free. Yeah. And also it was none of anybody's business. Her affinities were always for females, but she was always interested in handsome, attentive young men just because she liked to have the attention.
And also apparently looking for father figures too. I mean, that Akshay connection.
He's one in a series.
Right.
You're very right.
She's from kind of broken Midwestern family, goes to New York City as a teenager on her own on a bus in 1917.
On the train, actually.
On the train, okay, the train. Arrives in a blizzard, hooks up with Eugene O'Neill and the Provincetown Playhouse people, doing a little acting, drops out of journalism school, starts to become an artist. But then she goes to Paris in 1921, and the question that I'm always asking about this decade, the 1920s, is why did everyone in New York go to Paris?
Between Prohibition and the First World War introduced so many Americans to a culture that wasn't the puritanical, commercial, dollar-chasing, as Berenice called it, world that modern America had become. And Berenice warmed to that. And she just happened to fall into circles of enormously creative and attentive
I've always
people.
wondered about that. How is that possible in New York and in Paris both?
Well, she was introduced to this avant-garde crew by the Provincetown Friends, who she had met in college. And they introduced her in turn to a huge range of people. Malcolm Cowley, Kenneth Burke, Juna Barnes, then Man Ray, and then through Man Ray, Marcel Duchamp. You just can't make this stuff up. It's unbelievable. If you make one of those maps of who was talking to whom, she was talking to everyone. That's back to the you like somebody, you like them. They like you. And she was almost naive about it.
Well, she had talent. I mean, when she finally does start photography in 1925 or so, she's working for Man Ray and starts taking portraits of her own. She takes these very straightforward, strong, sculptural, authentic portraits of famous people in Paris.
She does, and the reasons that she credited herself for doing that was in her previous interests as a sculptor. And she felt she had this plastic sense of the flat image.
Which would be the opposite of what pictorialism was doing. It was very Japanisme and flat screen.
You are
and
right,
designing
but even Man Ray, Berenice said he made men look very strong and good, but women he turned into decorative objects, and you barely saw the person inside it, and Berenice didn't do that.
So she comes back to New York in 1929, before the Depression hit, in the fall of 29. That was an incredible moment of excitement. The city was
sort of the climax of Roaring Twenties. It looked like it would go on forever. She was hired by Fortune magazine to shoot portraits. By the time she began to do her Changing New York, that was owned by the government. because it was funded by the feds.
Federal Art Project.
The Federal Art Project. And that was 5 years then into the Depression. Berenice's pictures and a few others stand out distinctively because they were art projects unto themselves, the same way the muralists were.
Someone in your book says something like Berenice thought she was political, but she wasn't.
Well, that was a friend that was active actually in the 50s and 60s with Jane Jacobs and all the campaigning they were doing to save the village. And Berenice was
stop
very...
Robert Moses.
Berenice had very strong opinions about this, but she really was no theoretician. The editorial head of the Daily Worker, which is the communist newspaper, Louis Boudin's, and he called such people as Berenice tearful reds.
A bleeding heart liberal.
Bleeding heart, pretty much.
Yeah.
Although she was not sappy, she was capable of calling out pictures that showed just forlorn and downtrodden people, sort of pandering. And that was something that she felt very strongly about.
I mean, I think there's a fair amount of neutrality in the New York pictures. They approach the subject in a pretty direct way, although she did express opinions about clusters of skyscrapers. In this one piece she wrote, she says, if I tilt the frame, I can show disapproval of this sort of capitalist,
In the late 1920s and 30s is when the civil rights angles became very important to American communism and also feminism.
There was a setup that's very similar to today, although there are more sort of complications today, of basically sort of fat cat industrialists and then, oppressed laborers. And artists identified with labor, with the proletariat.
Many did, especially during the 1930s when people who were in these auxiliary fields, let alone fine arts, were unable to get work.
Abbott died in 1991, almost to the point where she saw a lot of things that are maybe more part of our contemporary world now.
The second wave of feminism had happened by the time she was still in her 70s and able to participate. I think it was perennial for her and also unaddressable. She felt men will always prevail. They always get their way. Even in the Clarence Thomas hearing, she said, what's the big deal? Men always talk dirty to girls or women. I mean, she was really just...
pragmatist in some ways,
in
right?
many ways, and uninterested in getting up on the barricades.
So, I mean, it'd be interesting to think what she would think of the Me Too movement, or even this kind of construction we're seeing here in Hudson Yards of New York now. Is that...
Oh, she'd just see money pouring out everywhere, and the influence of it over anything human, even though it's really beautiful to look at.
Well, I was going to say, I think she might feel a little bit conflicted about that. I think she always did, because I think she was excited by money and she was excited by New York.
Her famous night view picture shows this glittering landscape. You don't see any heartbreak in there or suffering or poverty, and yet it is meant to be like a carpet covering all these things that you know is going on beneath it. I think she doesn't shut any of that out or away by showing the glamour.